looking, throwing in the end zone.
Montana, touchdown, John Taylor.
Young to the air, Young to Jerry Rice, touchdown San Francisco.
Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm your host, Al Moriello, and today we're going to be discussing the 49ers 35-16 win over the Cardinals, a record-setting and historic day for Brandon Aiyuk, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, and the team overall. I will go over thoughts for the game, San Francisco's offense, how it was clicking, how the defense started strong again, but then seemed to wilt, and some issues that the team may have moving forward. In the plus section, I'm going to give my thoughts on 5 NFL games: Detroit, Green Bay, Buffalo, Miami, Philadelphia, Washington, Denver, Chicago, and Kansas City and the Jets. And then discuss Wheel of Time Season 2 on Prime Video. The season finale is dropping this upcoming Friday, but I have some thoughts so far in case you haven't seen the show. But like always, it starts with the 49ers, so let's get right into it.
Let's talk Niners.
Well, it may have gotten a bit hairy there in the third quarter, but the 49ers hold off the Arizona Cardinals 35-16, remain atop the NFC West at 4-0 and 2-0 in division games, beating the Rams and the Cardinals. Statistically, it was a close game. Yard-wise, 395 to 362 for the Niners. First downs, 30 to 23 for the Niners. Time of possession, 1 minute and 30 seconds in favor of Arizona. Neither team had a turnover. Let's run through some individual stats. Brock Purdy, 20 of 21, 283 yards, 1 touchdown, and he was sacked once. Josh Dobbs for the Cardinals, 28 of 41, 265 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He was sacked once also. Running the ball, Christian McCaffrey, 20 for 106 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jordan Mason, 3 for 10. Debo, 3 for 6. As a team, 31 rushes for 124 yards and 4 touchdowns. For the Cardinals, James Conner led the way, 11 for 52. Joshua Dobbs, 12 for 48. As a team, they ran the ball 25 times for 105 yards. Receiving, Brandon Aiyuk had a big game, 6 receptions for 148. McCaffrey, 7 for 71 and a touchdown. Ray McLeod, 2 for 22. Then 1 reception each for George Kittle, Ronnie Bell, Willie Snead, Jordan Mason, Kyle Juszczyk. No receptions for Debo Samuel. And on the Cardinals, Marquise Brown led the way, 7 for 96 yards. Rookie Michael Wilson out of Stanford, 7 for 76 and 2 touchdowns. And tight end Zach Ertz went 6 for 53. And I mentioned it was a record-breaking day for many individuals and the team. Let's go down that, and at least a personal record for Brandon Aiyuk. He caught 6 passes for a career-high 148 yards. Came into this game with a still recovering shoulder, good enough to go. There was some discussions and doubts, even though Debo was designated as questionable and not doubtful due to a rib injury, if they would be without Debo and Jawan Jennings, and Jennings did not play to a shin injury. Aiyuk, I don't want to say he stepped up because Debo was there and they had nearly their full complement of weapons, but a career high 148 yards. He had 2 pass receptions of 30 yards plus, 42 and 34 yards specifically, yes. Brock Purdy completed 20 of 21, which is good for 95.2% completion percentage, and that is a 49ers record, topping Steve Young's 90% completion record in 1991. And this is, again, a quarterback-rich history between Montana, Young, Jeff Garcia, Alex Smith. Think of him what you will. the latter part of his career with the 49ers, he was a very efficient and accurate quarterback, not putting the ball in harm's way. 95.2%. And the only throwaway he had was on a 3rd and 4. There was pressure in his face. He had to get rid of it. And he bounced one to McCaffrey on an out route, a little flare pattern out to the left. But otherwise, he was perfect. And they weren't easy throws. Did he have some open throws? Yes. Did he have some tight window contested throws? Yes. And already, again, the trolls on social media looking to pick apart Brock Purdy, and one troll, a couple people, one troll specifically in the back of my mind saying, oh, I'll give Purdy his credit when he does it against an actual defense. There's a reason why going 20 for 21 doesn't happen all that often. It's because no matter how good or bad the team is, you are playing an NFL defense. You can have a ball slip out of the quarterback's hand. You can have a ball thrown inaccurately, a quarterback not placing it where he wants to. That did not happen to Purdy. The Cardinals were playing a lot of zone. They weren't really rushing and blitzing. They only got to Purdy once. So Purdy had time to survey the field, but still he was throwing into 6 or 7 man secondaries or coverage units, and on 20 of 21 pass attempts found his man with accurate passes. In addition to the completion percentage record, this is also the highest completion percentage over what was expected, and it was 28 percentage points over what was expected, meaning they expected Purdy to complete 67% of his passes. Instead, he completed 95.2. That is the highest percentage over expected in the last 7 years with at least 20 pass attempts. So now we are, just to break this down for those of you in the back of the room, now we're beyond just a 49er record. Now this is an NFL quarterback record since 2016. Not all time, but it's fine. But they're already anticipating him completing mid-60s, which is still pretty good. And he completed 95%. Very good, very sharp day from Brock Purdy. Christian McCaffrey did not want to be left out on the record parade. It was his 13th straight game with the touchdown, which breaks 49er legend Jerry Rice, who had a touchdown in 12 straight games. Now, the 13 games for McCaffrey includes playoffs. So he scored a touchdown in the wild card round against Seattle and the divisional round against Dallas. And he was responsible for the only touchdown against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game when he tied the game at 7 in the second quarter. 13 straight games, very obviously ridiculously impressive. And again, it's a team that has a rich offensive skill position history. Rice's record, if you want to argue, maybe the 12 is a little bit more impressive as a receiver, giving the number of targets or catches a receiver would get per game versus a running back, especially an all-purpose running back for McCaffrey. But to take nothing away from what McCaffrey did, 13 straight games and counting. And for the team, scoring 35 against Arizona means this is the first time in the history of the San Francisco 49ers where they've scored 30-plus points in each of their first 4 games. I'm gonna say it again. An offensively rich history. Montana, Young, Garcia, Kaepernick was putting up points. Jimmy, Alex Smith. Those are just, let's just name quarterbacks. Then Roger Craig, Ricky Waters, Garrison Hurst, Charlie Garner, Frank Gore at running back. Receivers, of course, Dwight Clark, Jerry Rice, John Taylor, Terrell Owens, J.J. Stokes, Michael Crabtree, Anquan Bolden. Then you have obviously Ayuk and Debo. And then tight ends, at least historically, we'll just say Brent Jones and Vernon Davis before we obviously get to George Kittle. So those are teams that could put up points, right? This is the only time ever. And yes, there's a component of it where it's easier to pass now than it was 20 or 30 years ago. I get it. But still, just because something can be done or is easier doesn't mean a team is going to execute on it. Steelers, pretty good defense. Rams, feisty. Giants, they were sending the house against Brock Purdy and the Niners O-line. And this week, an Arizona team that last week beat the Dallas Cowboys. So you can only play who's on your schedule. I'd say two good defenses, two maybe not so good defenses, but the Niners moved the ball when they needed to, starting off the game strong, another touchdown to start the game, and then closing the game out in the fourth quarter when it got close. So thoughts from the game overall, San Francisco only had 6 possessions, but they scored on 5 of them, all touchdowns. Purdy started the game 13 for 13. If you go back to the previous game, 21 straight completions overall, which passed Steve Young's record from 1996. That's a 27-year-old record, and his first incompletion was nearly midway through the third quarter. I don't care that it was the Cardinals. I don't want to hear let him do it against the Eagles or Cowboys or whatever. It's an NFL team, and Brock was dropping dimes. Pinpoint. Don't look for things to complain about, trolls, when your quarterback is playing this well. Don't wish or dream for the Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. These are generational type cannon-armed quarterbacks. I'm not even going to say that Brock Purdy is good enough. Brock Purdy is pretty damn good. And he put on a clinic against a team that was up at halftime in their first 3 games. Feisty. They're not tanking. They're not tanking at all. Purdy was a maestro conducting that offensive orchestra. What more do you need to see, guys? If you're not a Purdy believer, and I'm sure the people that are listening, because again, pride myself on having the most intelligent audience out there, I'm sure you guys are believers. What more poise do you need to see? What more accuracy do you need to see? He uncorked a couple deep balls, completing them to Brandon Ayuk. One was actually underthrown, which was a good thing because Ayuk was running a post, but there was double coverage, and Ayuk made a great adjustment on the ball, but he is spreading it around. On a day that Deebo Samuel does not have a catch, the 49ers scored 3 touchdowns. Yes, 3 of them were Christian McCaffrey runs. One of them was a Brock Purdy sneak. One of them was a pass to Christian McCaffrey. But getting all the weapons involved. And again, even with Kittle only having a reception, Mason only 1, Juice 1, Willie Snead, Ronnie Bell only 1, the Niners had more than enough offense. And the trigger man, the point guard, you heard if you watched the game, Mark Sanchez said, it's like they're playing basketball out there, which was, I got the analogy from a point guard distribution standpoint, but that's really where the analogy ends and kind of falls apart. 35 points in the NFL. Yeah, it's not sexy like the Dolphins 70 or the Bills put up 48 this week or whatever the Cowboys did to the Patriots. So what? 4 straight games of 30 or more, 4 straight wins. Be happy, Niner fans. You're not a coach. You're never going to be a coach. You're never going to be a GM. You're never going to work for an NFL team where you want to dive into the criticism. Was it a perfect game? No, we're going to get into that. Defensively, it was not a perfect game. What more do you want out of Brock? Put him up on the cross and crucify him for that one incompletion if it makes you feel good. If rubbing one out tonight makes your moaning a little bit better, then crucify him for the one incompletion. Otherwise, you gotta either calm down or just shut up. McCaffrey mentioned 4 total touchdowns, 3 running, 1 receiving, a complete game. He goes over 100 yards rushing with 106. Excuse me. Get a drink. Got a little choked up there with the potential Purdy haters. We're going to get into his usage in a bit, but a complete game from Christian McCaffrey going over 5 yards to carry, on the ground and 10 yards per reception. Now, the defense, like basically every other game, maybe not the Rams game because that was a shootout in the first half, but 3 of the first 4 games started out strong. Only allowed 63 yards to the Cardinals as the 49ers built a 21-3 lead. And watching the game, if any of you out there were able to watch it, at 21-3, you feel pretty good. Holding the Cardinals down. I didn't think they were going to beat them 35-3 or anything obnoxious. And I wasn't even thinking about how they've maybe let some teams hang around, the Rams, the Giants, given the Steelers life in some instances, even though they won that game big. But after that 21-3 lead, Arizona goes on a 13-play, 87-yard drive at the end of the half, like that drive that the Steelers went on at the end of the half. They converted a fake punt on 4th and 2 from their own 21. A few plays later, receiver Michael Wilson beats Ambry Thomas on what looked like a bit of a stop or a stutter and go down the left sideline for 33 yards. Then on the next play, with the 49ers playing zone, Wilson runs an out route to the left, scores from 16 out, and the lead is 21-10. At the half, Ambry Thomas, who was in coverage in the vicinity, wound up taking the underneath guy. I don't know if he was supposed to get a little bit more depth and play in between both receivers to make the throw more difficult for Dobbs. It wasn't difficult at all. And I think it was Tayshaun Gibson or Talanoa Hufanga just got over late, and Wilson made a nice sliding catch near the sideline. So 21-10 at the half. To start the third quarter, the 49ers punt after 7 plays and 41 yards, pin the Cardinals back to their 1-yard line. The Cardinals go 99 yards in 11 plays in 6.5 minutes for a touchdown. They converted 3 third downs, all short, 1 yard, 1 yard, and 2 yards. One of those 1 yard third downs, the second one, was an offsides on Eric Armstead, and I think they would have picked it up anyway on the conversion by Dobbs. Drive down the field, Wilson scores his second touchdown to make it 21-16. James Conner on a sweep to the left is stopped on the 2-point conversion when the 49ers only had 10 players in. So it's 21-16 now. And a couple things. While they may be, if you want to call them fluky, but remember the end of the half drive week 1 against Pittsburgh, the Steelers went, I don't know what it was, 97, 98, 99 yards for a touchdown. Cardinals here go 99 yards for a touchdown. San Francisco needs to, and the first play of that was a sneak by Josh Dobbs. So right off the bat, it was 2nd and 8 from the 3. Still could not get off the field. Whether it's the 49ers playing soft coverage, this bend but don't break. Remember, it was the third quarter. It's not like this was an end of game situation where they're okay with giving up yards and giving up time. They just don't want to give up big plays. This was beginning of the third quarter. So it felt like the Steeler game, at least in that long drive where the defense couldn't put the clamps on. But it also felt like the Giants game last Thursday, or 2 Thursdays ago, I guess, where the Giants got it to 17-12 in the third quarter. Short punt by Wishnowsky, running into the punt returner, gave the Giants the ball at the 49er 35-yard line. Now, this is different. Starting at the Niners 35 versus the Arizona 1 is, what is that? That's a 65-yard difference, 64-yard difference. Giants punched in to make it 17-12, 5-point deficit in the third quarter against the Cardinals. 5-point deficit now in the third quarter. But much like the Giants game, where the Niners would score the next 13 points to win that game 30-12, against Arizona, San Francisco scores the next 14 points to win the game 35-16. The Niners defense then clamped down. They forced a punt. It was a 10-play, 32-yard drive that the Cardinals really couldn't get going. Then a turnover on downs at the end of the game where the Cardinals went 11 plays for 60 yards down to the 49er 15. Could have been a touchdown through the hands of Zach Ertz, which would have won me one of my fantasy games But now I have to wait and see what happens. I have 2 fantasy teams, so I'm going to get confused. I don't know if I either need the Seahawks kicker and the Seahawks defense to do something to win my game. In my other game, I think I need Graham Gano to get like 5 or 6 points. So I will be watching with great interest. But I could have had one game locked up if Ertz caught that touchdown. But then again, anybody taking the 49ers, laying the 14.5 or 15 points, would have lost. So whatever. But I was thinking that, like, because every catch Zach Ertz made on that drive were garbage yards, garbage catches. But in fantasy football, you'll take them. Garbage equals gold. We will take it. Now, 35-16 win. Good win. Was it perfect? No. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. And this isn't a huge imperfection, but it's a weekly imperfection. McCaffrey and the running back utilization. So going into this game, it was announced that Eli Mitchell would be out. He hurt his knee in practice on Thursday. Couldn't go, which means Ty Davis-Price was up as the third running back. McCaffrey had 27 total touches, 20 rushes, only 3 carries for Jordan Mason, none for Ty Davis-Price. Let's start with Price. I called him a jag. He is just another guy. Could not get in on the game. I don't think he got in on special teams because that's where Mason plays as well. Mason only 3 carries. Last week, Mitchell, I think, had 10 or 11. Is Eli Mitchell that good or that important in the eyes of Anthony Lynn and Kyle Shanahan that you can't give more than 3 carries for Jordan Mason? Hell, even Mark Sanchez at the end of the game when the Niners were up, 28-16, and they were driving for another touchdown, of him saying, like, yeah, I don't know if McCaffrey needs to be in. I think they could just kind of take him out and start icing him down. And he wound up being in for like 3 more plays. I think it was 1 carry. He got stuffed at the goal line. I don't know if Shanahan was trying to get him a 5th total touchdown, whatever. But the rotation still has to be better, guys. Remember, 20 rushes, which he had, and that seems to be his target number over 17 games, is 340 rushes. Too many. 27 total touches, let's call it, say, maybe 25, is going to bring that number to 350-something total touches. Too high, guys, or 370 or 80. Too high. You can't give me the excuse because Eli Mitchell is out, because Mason has been a sure-handed animal. He's a bowling ball running the ball. And if Ty Davis-Price, if the coaching staff, he's going to be inactive every week that McCaffrey, Mitchell, and Jordan Mason are healthy. If he's nothing or a last resort, then I would bring up Jeremy McNichols from the practice squad and release Price, or release him, see if you can sign him to the practice squad or try to trade him. He is I think he's the biggest and strongest, maybe power runner or weight-wise runner on the team, but it means nothing if the coaches don't trust you or they don't want you on the field because the 3 in front of you are better. Now, you may say, Al, what does it matter if it's Ty Davis-Price or Jeremy McNichols? Well, McNichols has some familiarity with Shanahan's offense, and thereby maybe a little bit more trust that if Mitchell or Mason is out and that 4th running back is gonna be active, let it be an actual active that gets some playing time. And maybe, I don't know this for certain, I'm just throwing out a suggestion, maybe McNichols would actually get snaps over Ty Davis-Price. Again, TDP is just a JAG, just a guy. Now, defense, the defensive let-up, right? Or, does this defense have killer instinct? Can they it's hard in the NFL to clamp down on a team for 60 minutes. Anytime an offense is doing anything worthwhile on the field, sustaining drives, you always hear that the defense is tired, not the offense. Meanwhile, I always laugh at that because the defense can rotate out defensive linemen, linebackers, corners if they're tired. If an offense is moving, those linemen are staying in, the quarterback's staying in. You might get some rotation with the tight ends and the running back and the receivers, but I would wager you have a more tired offensive line than you do a defensive line, or equally as tired, right? So it's hard. It's hard for a defense as good as San Francisco's is or wants to be to keep the clamps on for 60 minutes. But gave Pittsburgh some life, had trouble shutting the Rams down, couldn't really they played well against the Giants, but really needed to clamp down in the fourth quarter, and again, needed to clamp down in the fourth quarter against a feisty Arizona Cardinal team. And the D-line that I mentioned that goes 9 deep and I think has 8 active on game days, they got decent pressure. They were in on Dobbs on a handful of plays. Only 1 sack, Javon Hargrave. Dobbs fumbled and recovered it, and Bosa kind of fell on him. I thought that's considered a sack, but I guess it's not. My son asked me, he's like, Dad, is that a sack for Bosa? I'm like, yeah, I think so, but not on the stat sheet. So, hey, you learn something new every day, I suppose. And overall, defensively, if this is a team, the 49ers, that give up 284 yards per game, the Cardinals went for 395, so 111 yards more than the Niners average. Passing, San Fran's middle of the pack, giving up 218 passing yards a game. Arizona put up 265. At running the ball, Arizona went for over 100. The Niners give up about 60. Points, they give up about 14.5. Arizona went for 16 points in this game. Cardinals are feisty, guys. The thought of a tanking, I think, are overblown. And it's not even like they're trying to win and then like blow it and do something crazy at the end of the game, which I'll talk about. Some teams in the plus section look like they're doing like that. This is a feisty team. I'm going to get back to the Cardinals in 1 second. Let me just, one other thing about the defense. For as much as Steve Wilks wants to bring an aggressive nature to the defense with blitzing, and I don't see him really blitzing that much more than I noticed from D'Amico Ryans the past 2 years, or even before that, Robert Saleh. The D-line itself, I think, needs to find a way to get home a little bit more. And I don't think the Cardinals were employing a quick passing attack where they were getting the ball out in under 2.5 seconds the way Purdy was. It's on some plays, the longer developing plays to Ayuk obviously held it a little bit longer. So you can't say, like against the Giants or the Rams, that, especially the Rams, that they were getting the ball out quickly. But the completion percentages for the 4 quarterbacks they've played, and I would argue of them, 3 of them are not great or above average quarterbacks, is alarming. The immortal Kenny Pickett, Week 1, 67% completion percentage. Matt Stafford, the best of the 4, 62%. Daniel Jones, 69%. Josh Dobbs, 68%. How much does this matter when the Niners are winning games? Not a ton. Will this matter more when they're playing better quarterbacks that have better weapons? Yes, because think about it. The Cardinals' weapons, not great. The Giants' weapons without Saquon, not great. The Rams' weapons, I mean, who thought Puka Nacua was going to be that good, and Tutu Atwell having a game. And the Steelers' weapons, okay, but on average, you have quarterbacks completing over 65% of their passes. This feels more like a bend but don't break defense than an aggressive, all gas, no brakes that Robert Saleh, 3, 4, 5 years ago was preaching. And that's fine. As long as you're winning games, that's fine. But I think the D-line, and last week, Bosa saying, this could be as good of a D-line as 2019. It absolutely can. It's not showing up on the actual stat sheet in terms of sacks. And that's something, as they have Dallas coming in, they're going to have Philly later, Seattle twice, Chicago, they're going to have Cleveland, they're going to have Cincinnati, Jacksonville, Minnesota. They're going to be playing some good quarterbacks that know what to do with the football. Generating a rush with 4 is obviously going to be key when you're playing better teams. And just one last kind of closing note on the Cardinals for how impressive they were. Down 21-3. They didn't blink. They got it to 21-16. And I wonder, and I didn't look at the cap situation, and I should have, I apologize. If Josh Dobbs keeps playing this well, is there the possibility that the Cardinals trade Kyler Murray this year or in the offseason? And maybe a team that would want to trade for him would want to see that he's healthy first. So the trade deadline's around Halloween. It was announced that Kyler Murray is not going to be ready once the 4 weeks were up either on short-term IR or the PUP list. So he's going to need a little bit more time. But the way I would look at it is, if you're going to be a bad team, you might as well be a bad team with a cheap quarterback than a really expensive one. I don't know how prohibitive it would be to trade Kyler Murray this year or next year for their cap. If it's not terrible, or there is some cap savings, and I would imagine the cap savings would probably come more next year than this year. And if Josh Dobbs keeps playing like this, or 80%, 85% of what he did against the Niners, have a cheap, inexpensive quarterback and get more weapons around him, more players on defense. This could be a team with this efficient quarterback play that could make some noise in the NFC West in a year or two. But in any sport, you don't want to be average, in this case, below average or bad, and expensive, or expensive at the most important position. That I don't, even though it's the most important position on the field and the most important position in sports, I don't think you're going to see the net greater impact Kyler Murray would have on this offense right now than what Josh Dobbs is doing. Again, if you're going to suck and be cheap. Don't suck and be expensive. Now for the Niners, listen, overall takeaways, good teams beat bad teams, right? It may not have looked pretty 100% of the time, but again, at least 30 points in their first 4 games. Any of you that bet on this game, the Niners still covered the spread. Again, 14.5 or 15 points, depending on when you got in on the line. The Niners won by 19. San Francisco is 2-0 in the West. They have a 2-game lead on the Rams. Could have a 2.5 game lead on the Rams because they beat them. Could have a 2-game lead on the Seahawks tonight if the Giants, Monday Night Football at home, beat Seattle. I'm rooting for the Giants. I'm rooting for Graham Gano, but I'm also rooting for the Seahawks defense and Jason Myers, their kicker, to help me win 2 fantasy football games. And where does that leave us? It leaves us with a big game next Sunday night in Santa Clara as Dallas comes to San Francisco. Big matchup. The line opened up at San Francisco as a 3.5 point favorite, which means on a neutral field, the Niners would be a 0.5 point favorite, or a point, I guess. And in Dallas would be a 3-point favorite. Cowboys 3-1, spanked New England at home in Dallas after losing at Arizona. This should be a really good one, and one that we will cover from top to bottom on the next podcast on Thursday. So that concludes the 49ers section of the podcast. Stick around in the plus section. I'm going to be talking 5 NFL games: Detroit, Green Bay, Buffalo, Miami, Philadelphia, Washington, Denver, Chicago, the Chiefs and the Jets, and Wheel of Time, the fantasy series season 2 on Prime Video. Stay with us.
It's plus time.
So let's start off with the Lions on Thursday going into Green Bay, beating the Packers 34-20. This was all Detroit from the jump. They were up 27-3 at the half, dominated in total yards, 401 to 230, first downs 25-15, and time of possession plus 15 minutes for the Lions. They forced Packers quarterback Jordan Love into 2 interceptions and 5 sacks. Green Bay, mainly because they got down so quick, so soon, only ran the ball 12 times for 27 yards. This was a game where they got Aaron Jones back, only had a handful of carries. Christian Watson at receiver back, only a couple receptions. Romeo Doubs had the big game for the Packers, but obviously not enough. They still lost by 14 points. And I think, what the Packers look like to me is a team that's going to hover around 500. While they had, a couple nice wins, beating, no, did they lose? I think they lost to the Falcons, but they beat the Saints. They won week 1. Here they got drubbed by a team that beat them last week of the regular season to knock them out of the playoffs. Jordan Love, what he looks like is what Trey Lance would look like if he was the 49ers quarterback. And I'm not saying that because they're both right-handed. I'm not saying that because they're both mobile. I'm not saying that because they're both people of color. It just feels like the inexperience And Jordan Love played a whole lot more in college at Utah State than Trey Lance did at North Dakota State, essentially a D2 school for 1 year. Doesn't look decisive, got sacked 5 times. His interceptions were because he could not read defenders kind of falling under patterns and just did not look sharp. Completed over 50% of his passes, but accuracy has been an issue. He's only completing about 52 to 53% of his passes on the season. That's not going to be good enough. And this is a team that's got a decent offensive line. They have 2 running backs that they should be feeding the ball to 30 plus times a game in Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And you have a bit of that revolving door at, receiver between Doubs and Watson's been hurt. They have a rookie tight end that they're, counting on for some playing time. So it's a young team. They're going to grow together, but I don't think right now it's that much of a threat. And granted, we're very early on. The Lions are 3-1. The Packers are 2-2. Could the Packers get on a roll? Yeah. Got 13 games left to go, but it feels like this is going to be obviously the Lions division. The Bears are winless. The Vikings are have 1 win, 1-3. They beat the Panthers this week. So it's almost Detroit's division to lose. And this is an instance where what I said, if you're going to be average and cheap, not average and expensive. That's not the reason why the Packers got rid of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers partly did not want to be there. After he went to the darkness retreat, he wanted to play. He was excited by the Jets, excited by the weapons that they had there, and especially the defense. Fortunately, it didn't work out with the torn Achilles, but at least they have a cheaper option at quarterback that if they're going to be, a 7, 8, 9 win team, you might as well do it with some cap flexibility. You might as well do it with a cheap quarterback so you can supplement the other areas of your roster that are not that good. And as for the Lions, say what you want about, Jared Goff had a good season last year, a better quarterback at home than on the road, but he has some weapons at running back. David Montgomery had 3 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs, rookie out of Alabama, another running back, good-looking rookie Sam Laporte at tight end out of Iowa, and Amon-Ra St. Brown and others at receiver. Good-looking Lions team, one of the top 3 offensive lines in football, physical. They're going to be a handful for everybody that they play this season. Now, big game in the AFC East, Buffalo and Miami. Miami putting up 70 points last week to the Broncos, winning that game 70-20. And going to Buffalo, and everyone already, Miami, best team in the league, track stars, can anybody beat them, et cetera, et cetera. This is why the NFL or media cycle is a 24-hour media cycle. Something new, things, people are out of the public consciousness. COVID's not cool anymore. That's not on the news. The war in Russia and Ukraine isn't cool anymore. That's not on the news. You just got to you're not going to be able to keep people's attention that long. So you got to spout for 6 days in between games that Miami's the best team, put them on the top of the power rankings, this, that, blah, blah, blah. They go into Buffalo and they get housed 48-20. Statistically, this was a close game. Buffalo had the lead in yards, 414 to 393, first downs, 24-20, and 1 more minute of time of possession. Miami did have 2 turnovers. Now, 2 turnovers are not going to mitigate a 28-point loss, but they were a bit of a factor with a fumble and Tua throwing an interception. Josh Allen for the Bills, 320 yards, 4 touchdowns as a team. They ran it 29 times for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. Miami running the ball 19 times for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's over 7 yards a carry. But what the Bills did, in addition to getting 2 turnovers, they played keep away. They scored almost whenever they had the ball, and they kept the explosive plays to a minimum. Tyreek Hill, 3 for 58 for Miami, and his running mate Jalen Waddle, 4 for 46 yards. They did not let the Miami track meet beat them or have 2 or 3 play drives when they hit someone big over the top for a touchdown. Buffalo kept it in front of them, still got pressure on Tua, and wound up winning the game by 28. So now the discussion's going to be, how good is Miami really? And for 6 days until Miami goes out and potentially wins a game next week. That's why power rankings, I don't care for at all. They don't matter anywhere other than college football, because rankings actually determine something in college football. They determine nothing but fans with low self-confidence, their worth on seeing how high up on a power ranking their team rates. Philadelphia and Washington, a game that went into overtime. Philadelphia wins 34-31. Washington has given the Eagles problems the last handful of games. They've got a good defense. It's just a matter of, could the offense keep pace with Philadelphia, especially with second-year quarterback Sam Howell? Howell had a good game, 29 of 41, 290 yards, 1 touchdown. He was sacked 5 times, but the Commanders were up 17-7 in the first. They went up 17-10 at the half. They limited the vaunted Philadelphia running game to 27 rushes for 104 yards and 1 touchdown. That's less than 4 yards a carry. Now Philadelphia got up. Washington had to claw back, and they tied the game on the last play of the game, 31-30. It was, I think, a reception by Curtis Samuel. Don't quote me on that. I'm just going off of memory. And they just, with no time on the clock, and they decide to kick the extra point. While I'm more conservative than aggressive, to me, not because it didn't work out for them, I would have said this even if Washington won the game in overtime. You're 31-30. You have 2 big bruising running backs in Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. Not to say that you're going to hand the ball off. You can go play action or do something. You go for the win right there, because that you have control over what's going to happen with the football, meaning what your play call is, assignments, executing. As long as, your offensive line gives Sam Howell 2 to 3 seconds, he's going to throw the ball, or if they're going to hand off or an option or something, go for the win, especially with no time left. You convert, it's over. Otherwise, you're saying, well, one, we could potentially miss the extra point because extra points are no longer absolute gimmies. And what happens in overtime? Washington gets the ball. They go 3 and out. Philadelphia, bad short kick. Philadelphia goes 23 yards. Jake Elliott hits a 54-yard field goal. He's on my son's fantasy team, so thank you for that, Jake Elliott. But Washington had, I'm not going to say had their destiny, but had the ability to end the game in regulation, and they did not. What happened to Riverboat Ron Rivera? What happened? I wouldn't even consider that much of a gamble. I would consider it hey, we just scored. We can move the ball on this team. I'm going to trust my team to win it now versus roll the dice and see what happens in overtime. Big disagree. So let's get to the Broncos and the Bears. The Broncos, a 2.5-point favorite going into Chicago after getting destroyed by the Dolphins the week before. That's all you need to know about the Bears. The Broncos win by 3, so they cover the spread, even though the Bears were up 28-7 with less than a minute to go in the third quarter. Then Denver scores 2 offensive touchdowns to make it 28-21. Fields fumbles. It's scooped up and returned for a touchdown. We are tied 28-all. And up to that point, Justin Fields had a very good game. We're going to go over the stats at the end. Here's a curious decision by Matt Eberflus, who should not be a coach. I've said that for multiple podcasts. With 2 minutes and 52 seconds left in the game, the Bears are at the Broncos' 18-yard line, 4th and 1. They decide to run the ball with Khalil Herbert. They got stopped. Now, after the game, Matt Eberflus, was saying, I feel like we were in a rhythm there, the way we were running the ball, and we're going to go into the stats. Well, let's just talk about stats now. The Bears that game ran the ball 31 times for 171 yards, 5.5 yards a carry. So you would think that they could get the one, or maybe Fields is a big, strong kid. Why don't they sneak it? Why don't they do what the Eagles call the brotherly push and let him sneak it in? And that's not something, do you have to practice that play? All you have to do is line up 2 people behind your friggin' quarterback, sneak it, and have them push him on his rectum and get the first down. Instead of handing the ball off where your running back is, 5 to 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So instead of going up 31-28 with a chip shot field goal, Broncos get the ball at their own 18. They drive down, kick a 51-yard field goal with 1:46 left. They're up 31-28. and Justin Fields gets intercepted on the subsequent drive at the Denver 36 to end the game. Now, Fields, so similar to what we're going to talk about with Zach Wilson. 28 of 35 on the day, 335 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. And like I mentioned, the Bears ran the ball for 171 yards. The fumble tied the game. The interception ended the game. Bears fans should take some good out of it. It took until week 4 for Fields to look like not even an average QB, a good QB. 7 incompletions, 335 yards. He picked up another, I think, 30 or 40 plus on the ground and had his team up 28-7. Then it all fell apart. Defense couldn't stop Denver. Fields had to fumble the ball. It had to get scooped up for a touchdown. The Broncos had no business winning this game. Russell Wilson was very efficient, threw a couple touchdowns, 2 or 3. And they wind up stealing the game from Chicago. Now, if Chicago kicks that field goal from the 18, makes it, that'll be from the 26, a 36-yard field goal. They make that, they're up 31-28. No guarantee that the Broncos don't tie it. At that point, with 2:52 left, the Broncos would have been in 4-down territory the rest of the way, right? Because there's no reason to punt the ball back to Chicago. So they're going to have four tries to get a first down every first down, which makes it difficult on a defense. But I would almost put it in your defense's hand and let Russell Wilson or the Broncos in general make the mistake than what you did from the 18. If you wanted to go for it from the 1 and try to punch it in, 4th and 1 from the 1, then I would say, yeah, do it. Because now if you don't get it, you haven't backed up 99 yards. As long as you're not the 49ers defense, you can maybe stop them and not let them give up a touchdown. Curious call. Matt Eberflus does not deserve to be a head coach. Good response by Justin Fields. Good for him. Now, another quarterback under fire, Zach Wilson and the Jets. Chiefs win this game 23-20. Looked really bad in the first quarter when it was 17-0 Kansas City. Wilson had a really rough first quarter. Looked like, his last 2 games where he just didn't know where to go with the football. Skittish, not confident, all of that. But then the game turns around, interestingly enough, when the Jets are on defense, had the Chiefs backed up inside their 5, a face mask penalty in the end zone on one of the Chiefs' offensive linemen gave the Jets a safety to make it 17-2. And then after that, the Jets' offense and defense started to get rolling. So Jets' next drive field goal, 17-5. Jets get a pick. Then they get the ball back. Touchdown, 17-12. Chiefs had a field goal, 20-12 at the half. Late in the first half, Greg Zerloin did miss a, 52-yard field goal that hit the crossbar. Could have been another 3 points, which would have been important for later on. But again, anything 50-plus is really a coin flip. Jets start the second half. I actually went into the bathroom to shave. By the time I came out, the Jets scored a touchdown because Zach Wilson went 5 of 5, threw a touchdown to Garrett Wilson, and then Zach runs in the 2-point conversion. We are tied at 20. After that, each team punts twice, and then the unfortunate thing happens. Zach Wilson fumbles a shotgun snap near midfield. KC recovers the ball, and then essentially on that drive, not essentially, they ran out the clock. And there has been a lot of discussion on a play on cornerback Sauce Gardner for the Jets got called for holding a Chiefs receiver on a play that the Jets intercepted Mahomes on. And I've gone back and watched the replay, 6 or 7 times. Here's what I'm going to say. If anything, flag-wise, it should have been illegal contact beyond 5 yards. Because once they got to the 7-8 yard line, Sauce Gardner still had his hands on him. I'm not the 7 or 8 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. I think the Chiefs might have had the ball. It was either at a 40 or a 45. And then it was just easy to see what the 5 yards were. And there where Sauce was still kind of jostling with the receiver. They called it a hold and said, didn't look like a hold. But there was some physicality. There was some contact. So if anything, I could justify an illegal contact downfield. The problem, though, is, and again, this is why I had to watch it 6 or 7 times and timed it. When they threw the flag, the ref threw the flag right as or right after the Jets intercepted the pass. So I thought, are they going to call some sort of pass interference down where the interception happened because there were 2 Jets defenders covering one Chiefs receiver. And in real time, you couldn't tell, maybe was there a push off? Was there some contact that you couldn't see? The way the ref threw the flag so late, since the flag was related to 25 yards downfield, whatever it was, where Sauce Gardner got called for the hold. That was, to me, yes, that was a bad call. Do bad calls happen? Yeah. And Robert Saleh was incensed. He had a right to be. Sauce Gardner was behind himself. And again, now I could just go back and say, guy, it was like a 3rd and 20, right? Or something. What? He's one of the top 2 or 3 cornerbacks in the league, if not the number 1 corner. You don't need to play press there. It's 3rd and 20. The rush got there anyway. Play off. You don't need, at worst case, you give up a field goal and it's 26-20 and you get the ball back. The worst case scenario is what happens. A flag, insult to injury, you get the interception, it doesn't count. And then the Chiefs wind up running it out. On top of that, though, Jets defense, there was twice, and the last one salted the game away, where Patrick Mahomes ran for 20 plus yards to pick up first downs. When it was 20 yards that he needed, or if it was even just 10 on a 3rd down at the very end of the game, basically the last meaningful play of the game, Jets went to man, receivers were downfield. The way that he broke the pocket, there was no one down the left side of the field, and he easily picked it up and slid inside the 5. This is a shame for Zach Wilson, much like the Justin Fields situation where the fumble touchdown that the Broncos returned and the interception at the end of the game is going to erase the good game that Zach Wilson had. He went 28 of 39 for 245 yards and 2 touchdowns. He outplayed Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes went 18 of 30, 203 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, should have had another one that a linebacker dropped. I think it was Mosley right in his hands, and should have had the one that Sauce Gardner got called for the hold. Should have had a 4 interception day. Zach Wilson played well, and good for him. A lot of us, including myself, thought that he has no business being an NFL starter, and that the Chiefs were going to embarrass this team, and this would be the last time that you would see maybe Zach Wilson on the field or in a New York Jet uniform getting significant playing time. He responded to the challenge. Is this the game where it's clicking for him? I'm not a Jet fan, but I hope so. I have no axe to grind for him. I hope so. Running the ball, Jets 16 for 108, so about almost, It's almost 7 yards a carry, or over 6 yards a carry. The Chiefs just ran it better. Who'd have thought a Chiefs team would run it 35 times for 204 yards and a touchdown? Commitment to the run. It's because the Jets have a strong secondary and strong pass rush, and that's the way you negate that. All that said, Mahomes threw two picks and should have had 2 more. Chiefs lucky to escape. Jets, was texting with some friends during the game, one of whom is a big Jet fan. I've said it a couple weeks ago that with competent quarterback play, there are still 8 winnable games on the schedule, and I believe that. I believe that there are 8 winnable games. If Zach Wilson can either play like this or 80% of what he showed, if he could play up to 80% of what he showed against the Chiefs, they have 8 or more winnable games. Maybe if he plays like this again or consistently, the games that I think they're going to drop, maybe they're going to be winnable because the Jets defense can turn you over, can get pressure, can potentially give Wilson a short field. Hopefully this game gives Wilson confidence, and I felt bad for him because you saw him mouth on the sideline, I lost this game for us. No, you didn't. I mean, the fumble was unfortunate. You played a clean game before that, just like Fields. The fumble was unfortunate. He played a clean game. And then if you want to say Justin Fields lost the game for them, yeah, he threw the game-clinching interception. And if you want to say Wilson had the game-clinching fumble, you could look at that. I wouldn't. Bad penalty. on Sauce Gardner, missed field goal by Greg Zuerlein, things that could change the complexion of the game completely, especially the Gardner foul, because that was an interception. Who knows what the Jets would have done with it? The Jets were down 23-20 at that point. No guarantee they go down the field and get any sort of points. But it would have been nice, not even nice, it would have been just to see them get the chance because of how late that flag was thrown. It looked fishy because it looked like the ref only threw the flag because he knew an interception was going to happen. And to me, I don't know if that should be investigated or if it could even be investigated. I think that was a really, really bad call. So to conclude the podcast, fantasy series The Wheel of Time, the second season, shown on Amazon Prime Video. 7 of its 8 episodes are available to stream. The last episode of the season, which I believe is going to be another 8-episode season, comes out this Friday. So The Wheel of Time is a fantasy series. It is based on a very popular and highly acclaimed 14-book series in which the characters that you're following kind of take place in a situation in their land where their world was broken by evil forces. Apparently, prior to when the story picks up, it was a land of technology or high technology, and now it's something akin to the Middle Ages. And there are beings who can channel magic or energy. They're only females, and they're called the Aes Sedai. And Rosamund Pike, the main character, is one of the members of the Aes Sedai sect or clan. And she, in season 1, was tasked with finding the character that's called the Dragon Reborn, the person who could help end the battle against the bad guys, the Dark One and his bad guys in the future, the final battle. And the first season was really Rosamund Pike going to this small village, and there's I think 4 or 5 friends that she's not sure which one of them is going to be this reincarnation of an all-powerful being. And it winds up being one of the male characters, and that's problematic because men aren't supposed to be able to tap into this energy and be able to channel this energy, because whenever they do, it drives them mad. And it winds up being one of the male characters who is the Dragon Reborn. And at the end of the first season, he thinks he kills the main baddie, the Dark One. And what winds up happening is instead he releases the Dark One's kind of first lieutenant, and there's more evil chess pieces on the board now. And Rand, the male character who can possess this power, leaves. He wants to live in seclusion because if he goes mad with this power, he doesn't want to kill anybody that he cares about. And Rosamund Pike, who's an Aes Sedai who can channel this energy, gets cut off from it. So the second season, she's depressed, she plays like a very emotionless character already, but she's a bit depressed that she cannot channel this energy, and they are following how the original group of friends from season 1 kind of break off and are kind of going on their own adventures. So you have multiple storylines that you're following there, which at some point in the future, whether it's season 3 or 4 or whatever, it's going to come together. So season 1 was setting the table. This season is, to me, better than season 1. I know that I think it's just more entertaining, faster paced, more action. And it's obviously moving the story along. It's getting into more interesting aspects of the characters and their situations that they find themselves in than what we saw in season 1. I understand, not that I understand, but I know there are a lot of book readers of this Wheel of Time series that don't like it at all, that don't like the adaptation, that says it's not, faithful to the adaptation. And I get that. I get that feeling being a Star Wars fan on what the sequel trilogy movies could have been if they had adapted some of the novels instead of going their own way. But folks have to remember that when you adapt something like this, much like the Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings TV show on Amazon Prime, You are adapting for the general audience. You are not adapting for the super fans. And I sometimes think about it like, well, if you make it for the super fans, the general audience is going to like it too. No, because a super fan of novels are probably smarter than the general audience who may not read at all. Not saying they can't read, but just saying that they might not be book reading people. So they want to cast the widest net as they can for Rings of Power and specifically for Wheels of Time. The Wheel of Time. I don't know what changes are going to be made. I may actually read or listen to the audiobooks in between seasons 2 and 3 because you're going to get a 2-year wait. And that's kind of like, so a couple issues that I just want to discuss there. So yes, better than season 1. If you like fantasy, I would watch it. If you've never read the books before, you won't know any better. And if you have read the books before, you probably are watching and have your own opinion on this. But for a 14-book series, most of these books are 25+ hour audiobooks. Some upwards of 40 hours. And this is a series that has 8 episodes per season. You are getting a solid 60 minutes of story. So if you subtract any, recap intro and any end credits, you are still getting 60 minutes of story. So in 8 episodes, you're getting 8 hours of story, which is the equivalent of a trilogy, like 3 2.5 hour movie trilogy. Given how long these books are, again, at least 25+ hours to read, having 8 hours per season, which doesn't necessarily equate to 8 hours per book, that's different. You have to trim stuff out. Like, I've never adapted anything for TV before. I can only imagine how hard it is to keep the essence of the story, what people love about it, what made it so highly acclaimed, but make it palatable for TV and for a general TV audience. Even though there are 14 books, like I said, this is not one book per season. They do apparently jump around a bit, but this is planned as an 8-season series. And this is taking, between season 1 and season 2 was 2 years. 2021, season 1, 2023, season 2. Same for the Rings of Power, 2 years between. Same for the Mandalorian. So that's become, it's funny, it's become a standard 2-year wait between seasons. And you get less episodes, 8 to 10 episodes, than you got for hour-long, like Battlestar Galactica from the early 2000s, late 2000s, early 2010s, when you were getting 20+ episodes, and it definitely always came out a year apart. So if this is an 8-season run, it's going to take 14 years to finish, from 2021 to 2035. It wasn't always like this. Game of Thrones, there was 8 seasons. First 7 seasons had only 1 year between seasons. Between 7 and 8, there were 2 years, and it's funny because season 8 was the shortest season. I know the episodes were a little bit longer, but still, that was your introduction to 2-year waits between seasons. It's just, and listen, I hope they get 8 seasons out of this. I don't think they will, just based on the fact that if they have to have a sacrificial lamb between this and the Rings of Power, Wheel of Time will lose. They're spending, I think, $1 billion on the first 2 seasons of Rings of Power, and I haven't seen the production cost for Wheel of Time. Although they have improved the special effects, season 1 looked cheap, almost something on like a late night sci-fi channel fantasy series. That has gotten better. The acting has improved. Rosamund Pike, even though she's kind of like emotionless, she does it in a freaky way. She's great. There's a character from HBO's old Rome series who plays Rosamund Pike's sister and the mother to a would-be king in this series. So I was happy to see a familiar face because she has this, especially, I only know her from Rome, but she played someone of high society in the Roman Empire, and this time frame kind of has the same feel for how people are living. Maybe a little bit, maybe 100 or so years after the Roman Empire, but not to split hairs. So that was a nice addition. I think, again, overall, this is a series that is worth watching. It's good, but not great fantasy. The books are probably great fantasy. And listen, I'm a little intimidated. 14 books. The reading them is off the table. Not that I don't have patience to read anymore. There is a Star Wars book I'm trying to get, through or want to get through on my phone. There's other books that I have that I've never read that I don't want to read, or I'm sorry, that I do want to read. And I have multiple Audible tokens that I have to use on audiobooks that I would love to put to the Wheel of Time. It would be great if it was a trilogy. I think I can stomach listening to 3 books. I'm sure these are great books, but I like the books I read are maybe like 12 to 15 hours per book. So I can move from book to book. And whether it is a trilogy of whatever I'm listening to, Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever, other stuff, at least I'm moving pretty quickly. I can get through maybe like a book in 2 weeks if I can listen like an hour a day. That's my average. But something that's like 25, 40 hours is going to take me over a month to get through. Not taking anything away from the quality. And if I do start it and it is good, I will let you guys know. But the season finale is this Friday, October 6th on Amazon Prime. I think it probably drops in the morning. Unlike Ahsoka, which the season finale is tomorrow, Tuesday, October 3rd. That premieres 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. But if you haven't checked it out, it's something I think worth checking out. You'll know season 1, the first 2 or 3 episodes, if it's something you want to stick to. Don't hold it to the bar of Game of Thrones. It is not at that level. But if you like fantasy, it is a good series to watch. And that concludes the podcast for this week. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to give us a listen. We have a Monday night game tonight, Giants and Seahawks. I have fantasy implications on both sides. We will be back on Thursday to preview the bigger than big, huge Niners-Cowboys Sunday night game. We're going to give any sort of additional breakdown coming off of the Cardinal game. Look ahead, fully break down the Cowboy game, give Week 5 NFL picks and more in the plus section. Until then, the next couple days, stay happy, healthy, and safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.